Thank you, Mr. Winograd. We'll move now to Chancellor Benjamin.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I am the Chancellor of Contra Costa, but right now I'm also serving as the chair of the California College Promise Leadership Team for Community Colleges. And other members serving with me are Dr. Constance Carroll, who's Chancellor at San Diego, Brian King, who's Chancellor in the Greater Sacramento area, Los Rios, Eloy Oakley, who is the Superintendent-President of Long Beach, and you've heard and know, obviously, about the Long Beach College Promise. Dr. Francisco Rodriguez, who is the Chancellor of Los Angeles District, Sandra Serrano, who's Chancellor of Kern, and Dr. Larry Galizio, who is the President and CEO of the Community College League of California. We've been meeting, and we've been talking about this and trying to provide some leadership around developing a California promise that coincides with what we do and what we see as community college CEOs in concert with our trustees. And you've already heard information about the promise that was enacted by the President of the United States, modeled after the Tennessee program. And it is a proposal, as you know, to make community college free for everybody. It's a very democratic idea. At the national level, of course, this has started a conversation about college affordability and the importance of making those first 2 years free, extending the 12 years to 14, which is pretty logical to us anyway. But it's also highlighted the need to redefine what it means to be workforce ready, and concomitantly, it has fueled even more the shift in higher education from access to success. And that's what this will do to me more than anything else. A significant part of moving the student success agenda forward is ensuring that students can afford not only to start college, but to complete it. I don't want to, I'm going to try to stay on target here, but it's important. We have lots of students starting, but so many don't finish. And part of it has to do with finances. But we have to move the success agenda forward to ensure that students can afford to start and complete their studies. It is critically important for community college leaders to advocate for academic as well as financial resources that support the students we serve to help them attain certificates, licensures, associate degrees, and meet transfer requirements so they can, in fact, move to the next level, whether it is a job or further education. So through experience in California, all of us CEOs have learned that tuition is only a small part of a community college student's cost of attendance, and that seems to be the theme today. We have to have the conversation about affordability and financial aid that includes the cost of living, of books, of food, and other critical expenses. These are impediments to this whole idea of completion and making these individuals positive, contributing members of our society. And that's a self-esteem builder. So my community college colleagues and I are committed to this endeavor. We're using the national framework. We've partnered with Heads Up America, and we're working with Dr. Martha Cantor. And the California College Promise, as proposed by us, will take advantage of our very unique position, financial and funding-wise, and connect to other initiatives to increase student success. Already, many of our boards throughout the 73 or 72 districts have approved resolutions and submitted editorials to our local newspapers supporting the promise and conducting activities in support of the effort. We want the community to know about this effort and to weigh in on it, and believe you me that when they see the editorials, they do, positively and negatively. The other thing we want to do is to promote the Board of Governors fee waiver, and you've heard a lot about that today. Currently, a number of students apply and are eligible for waiving their fees, but do not take advantage of the program. And in our district, we have looked at the numbers, and some students do apply. A huge number just don't even follow through. But we're thinking that through increased outreach, and Mr. Troy mentioned this, and marketing programs, our districts will work to ensure qualified students actually take advantage of all aid and waivers available to them. We would also like to leverage the state's huge investment in the BOG fee waiver. By that I mean the state invests hundreds of millions of dollars right now, resulting in free tuition for thousands of students, as you well know. We feel that we can leverage those dollars by partnering with K-12 colleges and universities, our own foundations, the private sector, to increase access to underrepresented community members. And you know that the number of underrepresented students in this state has increased astronomically over the last 10 or 15 years, and we have more and more people who don't even know about the access or what's available to them, and we feel we have an obligation to reach out to those students. We think that using the borrow fee waiver, we can challenge the philanthropic community in our regions to match state dollars with private dollars and create tuition-free pathways for responsible students, and that will result in the formation of Promise programs at the local level. And as you know, several Promise programs, and some have been referenced here today, have already been developed. But I just quickly want to, as I close, cite 3 of those, and each one of the 3 will show how different funding sources can be used to fund these local programs. And the first one I'll mention is the Cuesta Promise. Cuesta College, they received a donation from a donor of $13 million. They used that $13 million to create the Cuesta Promise. They pay tuition and fees for all graduates of a San Luis Obispo County High School for the first year of their programs. Students must attend Cuesta the fall semester immediately following completion of high school to qualify. The second is the Richmond Promise. It just happens to be in the district in which I work. This one was funded by Chevron, and Chevron, for reasons we won't discuss here, donated, provided, or made available to the city of Richmond $35 million. And so the city of Richmond created what they call the Richmond Promise. And it's a 10-year program that guarantees every public school student who graduates from high school would receive $1,500 to attend college, and Contra Costa College is a partner in that program. And finally, the third, and this is a different funding source, they use their foundation, Ventura College Promise. Their program covers tuition and fees at Ventura College for all Ventura County High School graduates, regardless of family income, so long as they commit to setting an educational goal, apply for college within 12 months of high school graduation, complete the FAFSA, and stay continuously enrolled in a college for 2 consecutive semesters. Now, what I found out about the funding of this one is pretty interesting. It goes through their foundation, but they have a swap meet, and they make a huge amount of money on this swap meet. They use funds from that and also from their vending machines that they use on their campuses. So I thought that was pretty. But that's just 3 different examples of different types of funding that can be used. So in closing, quickly, I'll just say that we have a wonderful opportunity, I think, before us, or you do. Well, together we do, in addressing the #1 challenge facing many of our students, and that is that of financial resources. In partnership with you, of course, and our local communities, we think we can ensure that more students have the opportunity to transform their lives while contributing to the local economy and to our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chancellor Benjamin. Ms. Cochran.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm so happy to be here with you today. I'm with TICAS, which is the Institute for College Access and Success. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan research and advocacy organization based in Oakland, but we also have an office in Washington, D.C. And our mission in both locations is to improve educational opportunity and outcomes nationally and in the state of California so that more students are completing credentials without burdensome debt. So, the role of financial aid in helping students access to and succeed in college is very well documented. I think we all know that financial aid and need-based grant aid in particular help students enroll, but research also does show that it helps students persist once they're there. And I think beyond the research, it's easy to understand why. First you need financial aid to help pay the tuition bill, and that's where the access component comes in. If you can't pay that tuition bill, then you can't step foot in the classroom. And that's how financial aid supports access. But California has supported for a long time now affordable access to college by keeping tuition fees as low as possible and creating a Board of Governors fee waiver that waives those fees for over 1 million students a year, including 70% of all full-time students. The Board of Governors fee waiver is simply the most progressive statewide free tuition plan in the country. It's funded solely by the state, unlike Tennessee or Oregon. It's not limited to recent high school graduates or to students whose high school grades are up to snuff or to certain students in certain degree programs. Practically the only limitation of the fee waiver is that you have to need it. So, however, textbooks, transportation, food, and housing, as many people have already spoken about, are real costs of attendance. If you only have resources to cover that tuition bill, then you can't keep going to campus day after day, week after week. You can't get to the library and study. You can't visit the tutoring center. For California community colleges, those other non-tuition costs are more than 90% of the cost of attendance. So this is California Community College Students' Affordability Challenge. And I'm happy to share with you today a new TICAS analysis. I think you all should have copies of it that compares what college truly costs for low-income students at public colleges across the state. The map shows each of the undergraduate serving University of California campuses, along with the closest CSU campus and community college campus. It reflects the college's own estimates of what low-income students have to pay after subtracting all the available grant aid for them to cover their total college costs. I should note, because these numbers look a little differently from what the representative from the Legislative Analyst's Office had mentioned, we looked here at students who are living independently from their parents. We did that because, as he mentioned, the distribution of living statuses can make some of the other data that we have on net prices a little messy. And we also have seen data that suggests that this is, in fact, the most prominent living status for community college students and students at all public colleges. So anyway, also to mention that this analysis focuses on low-income students in particular for a few reasons. One is that there's simply very stubborn income gaps in who's getting to and getting through college. So we need to focus specifically on low-income students. Second, the burden of college costs falls most heavily on the lowest income students, as several of our own recent analyses have documented. And finally, and despite many, many myths to the contrary, the burden of student loan debt falls on the lowest income students. So as you can see, in none of the 9 regions does the community college have the lowest net price, and in 6 regions, the community college is more expensive than either of the public university options. And all of these net price figures can be found in Table 1 on the second sheet. At none of these colleges, to be clear, are low-income students paying tuition, thanks to a state Cal Grant program and the Board of Governors fee waiver program, since both of them help students from families that have incomes well beyond the median household income in the state. But financial aid supports low-income students' success to very different extents, depending on the type of college that students attend. The student at UC Berkeley gets about $6,000 in grants to help with their non-tuition costs, compared to less than $4,000 for the student at Berkeley City College, often their roommates. As a result, the Berkeley City student has to come up with a lot more out of pocket than the others. Now, students at all types of schools cover their net costs, these net prices, in the same array of ways, a combination of family resources, work, and student loans. Now, for our sample student, their income is so low that the U.S. Department of Education estimates they can't afford to contribute anything. So beyond family contributions, many students work to earn money to cover their costs. Now, the research is very clear. Working too much is detrimental to student success. Specifically, students should keep work hours under about 20 hours a week. Now, Table 2 shows how many hours of work it would take each week throughout the academic year to cover the net prices in Table 1. Now, what I would note first and foremost is that there is not a single public college in the state at which low-income students can cover their net price while working less than 20 hours a week. But at the majority of community colleges, the number of work hours needed each week is 35 or more. So moving beyond work, another option students have to cover their net cost is student loans. At the public universities, many people borrow to reduce their need to work, and you can see borrowing rates in Table 3. That's very rarely true in community colleges, so they're not using loans to reduce their need to work. Students for whom their own family resources, a modest amount of work, and student loans aren't enough to cover their costs are really in a tough spot. They can work long hours, but that might backfire, and they might end up dropping out. They can also decide to take fewer classes, go part-time. That requires less time studying and allows more time from work, but it also decreases their chance of graduating. So Table 4 shows how many students at each of these campuses enroll full-time. Now, full-time enrollment rates at the community colleges are much, much lower than at the universities, less than 20% at 2 of the community colleges. To be clear, many community college students choose to enroll part-time, and we should certainly enable them to do so. But it's not a real choice if we require students who want to go full-time to also work full-time at the same time. So the low rates of full-time attendance are an affordability problem in disguise. Now, national survey data show that community college students care just as much as four-year students about graduating as soon as possible. But community college students are twice as likely as four-year students to say they're taking fewer classes per term in order to make more time for work. Among working students, 76% of those at community colleges work more than 20 hours a week, compared to less than half of students at four-year schools. Community college students are less likely to receive support from their family in covering college expenses and more likely to be providing financial support through their employment to their families. And not surprisingly, community college students are more likely than four-year students to say that their employment is the primary way they pay for housing, food, and transportation. So to make community college more affordable and help them succeed once they're enrolled, the state must focus on enabling low-income students to take more courses per term and complete their degrees faster. Within the realm of California existing state policy, there are several fronts through which grant aid for non-tuition costs could be improved for community college students. First is to increase the Cal Grant B Access Award, as others have mentioned already. That helps low-income students limit their work hours and focus on their studies. Now, this Access Award has seen some increases, but the grant still holds just a fraction of the purchasing power as it used to. With $300 million, the state could increase that Access Award to $3,000. With $400 million, it could increase the Access Award to $3,500. The state could serve more of the state's Cal Grant eligible applicants. Hundreds of thousands of students every year, most of them at community colleges or who want to attend community colleges, are turned away. They meet the financial and merit eligibility criteria for Cal Grants they've applied, but they're just simply turned away because there aren't enough grants. This year's budget agreement had a small increase in the number of awards, but far more needs to be done. Now, both of these recommendations would help community college students, but they'd also help low-income students across all types of colleges. And both of those recommendations are widely endorsed by students, civil rights, workforce, and business groups across the state. To provide further help to community college students specifically, the state could strengthen the Board of Governors fee waiver so that it helps financially needy students with not only tuition charges, but also some non-tuition costs of attendance. For between $300 and $400 million, the state could provide every full-time community college student who needs help paying for college with $1,000 on top of their fee waiver. So providing fee waivers recipients with additional funds through, a cash grant or a book voucher would help students focus on their studies. The state could deepen investment in the full-time student success grant. The 2015-16 budget agreement provided $39 million to give additional grant funds to Cal Grant B recipients at community colleges who enroll full-time. Increasing that allocation could mean bigger grants for each student or expand eligibility to some of these many, many students who meet the eligibility criteria for Cal Grants but are turned away. And finally, the state could deepen investment in student financial aid administrative funding at the community colleges. Since 2003, the state has provided the community college system with $38 million for the purposes of staffing up financial aid offices to help students get the help they need in accessing financial aid. A small portion of that money has been earmarked for what you've already heard about, the I Can Afford College campaign. However, even with that infusion of funds, community college financial aid offices still run on relative fumes with far less per student funding than CSU or UC financial aid offices. So more administrative funding from the state would help with both statewide and local outreach efforts and help the students who need assistance not just get their fees waived, but also get them other financial aid to help with non-tuition costs. So any and all of these recommendations would help to increase affordability for community college students, and we consider them to be very worthwhile investments for the Senate Budget Subcommittee to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cochran. A lot of interesting detail there. Senators, questions now with the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious of the students that graduate or get an education that's free or subsidized. How many of them stay in the state? I mean, there's got to be a number that get job opportunities outside. So I'm just wondering how we say, okay, we're making an investment in those that grew up here or came here but can go somewhere else. I'm just wondering if that's ever been calculated.
I want to give you the example out of Kalamazoo, which ties the receipt of a scholarship to your attendance at the public school, drawing families back into the community for the entire K-12 life of their students. They have no state retention requirement. They don't even have a Kalamazoo retention requirement, but their retention rates are above 80% because their families have grown roots in the community.
Right, yeah, so that you've got prior history. So that Cal grants are non-prop 98, and it seems to me if you want to do more, what kind of cooperation will you get from the other levels of education in this state to say, okay, let's use Prop 98 funding to pursue your requests? I mean, you're working together, Chancellor, with other community college districts, but what about the rest of the
Yes, it becomes
systems?
a matter of robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
I see where you're going. And we've thought about that, and I don't know the best solution. I guess the best solution that would keep friction down would be for it to be new money and not to take money from one and give it to the other, because you're diminishing that group in a way as well.
And I'm from a last comment, Mr. Chair, maybe this would be like a closing comment, but as you look at the state's budget and you look at some of the costs that keep growing, for instance, CalPERS, CalSTRS, a ballot measure in November that wants to do a bond that builds more school campuses, but it's coming out of the general fund. And you see so much pressure on the general fund that something's going to have to give. And I'm trying to see why are we paying so many things for education out of the general fund, and why are they not in the 98 side of the ledger?
Mr.
Those are the
Winograd?
things I'd like to work on.
Senator, I would just point to, first of all, comments you made earlier that if you move to a simple system of free college tuition, you eliminate a number of administrative dollars which could be repurposed without creating a Peter versus Paul fight.
Right.
Because they're already in the system. The application for Tennessee's free college tuition consists of about a page and a half. Did you graduate? What was your ACT score? And have you signed up to visit a mentor every month? And as a result, they've saved millions of dollars. They moved $5 million worth of remedial education costs into the high schools. So once you understand that you're flipping the system and we're not going to do high tuition, high aid system anymore, there's a lot of bureaucratic costs that go away.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Allen.
I wanted to ask just a little bit about this question of retention, of completion. Do you have, Mr. Winograd, do you have some data on these promise programs and how they relate to four-year college completion?
So the data from Kalamazoo, which I've submitted and happy to share with you individually, does relate to both four-year and two-year, and the numbers I gave you included four-year increases, but most of the impact in Kalamazoo anyway has been on baccalaureate programs as opposed to 2 years.
Right. So the program, the programs, but the Tennessee and Oregon ones are focused on just tuition for community college, right?
And in those cases, as you see, Tennessee experienced a 7% decline in its four-year college enrollment, even though they experienced a much greater increase in community colleges. Overall, net 10% increase in college. Some of that is because in order to help pay for the Tennessee Promise, the state reduced the value of its so-called Hope scholarships, 4 years based on academic performance, not need. They reduced it by 25%. They found most of their money from lotteries, but because there was less tuition support and scholarships for community colleges, as well as the fact that it was completely free and local, they did see that impact.
Yeah, but then, I mean, if it's anything like we see here, then you're kind of not solving the problem, right? Because
Well,
if
the
we
net
find-
increase of 10% is nothing that California has ever accomplished in a single year.
Right, but it's only of limited value if they don't actually end up, transferring and completing a 4-year degree.
Well, so
And the
your,
chances of
your,
getting a
your
4-year
question
degree.
relates not just to 4-year degree acquisition, but to what degree do they transfer, et cetera.
Right.
This state has a far superior transfer program now, thanks to the legislature, between community college and baccalaureate programs at CSU than anything Tennessee has. I'm not sure the data would be comparable. We don't have any results from Oregon yet.
So your point is that the transfer structure, the infrastructure, the culture, the seamlessness, the support systems are strong enough here that we'd be able to take advantage of that. Driving more people into community colleges will still run them into the 4-year system.
Senator,
at a
that would
higher
be our
rate.
expectations, and obviously you may want to consider pilot programs rather than full-scale implementation to see if our assumptions are correct. But those would be our assumptions.
And I think you have to think also about those who don't intend to get a bachelor's degree. People can also, our students complete career technical education programs and are immediately employable. And that's a huge boon to the economy as soon as they, so I want you to think of all of our students and not just the ones who.
No, of course.
prefer.
But I am thinking about the fact that even at some of our highest transfer schools, only 5% of the students who say they want to go on to get a 4-year degree, and that's why they're going to community college, actually end up making that transfer. So I'm not even just talking about the people that you're talking about folks who are going there to get.
Yeah, I'm just the entire, all of our students. I mean, they have different goals.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So the other big question, of course, is where do we come up with this, magical $2 billion? Maybe,
200
maybe
million.
from cap and trade. Who knows?
A few hundred million, a few hundred million.
Okay, last